Hello. I'm not 100% sure if I can be heard, but I'll continue hoping that I can. Hello, everybody. My name is John Parsons, and I was a friend and colleague of Elena Solovova, and it's my honor today to say a few words about her in her memory. So I'll just set my timer so as not to overrun. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I met Elena Nikolaevna, because the actual meeting of her says something about her character. And I met her a few times, actually. This is going back about 15 years ago. I'd met her at conferences of one kind or another, because in those days I was involved in importing academic and ELT materials into Russia. And one day I had her business card, that's all, and I'd spoken maybe a few words with her, but one of the big British publishers asked if I would introduce her to Elena. So I made a phone call, I introduced them, and this large publishing company asked her, would you write a book for us? And she said, I'm ever so sorry, I'm so busy, I have so many projects, I would love to. And eventually this lady from a big publishing house left the office, and I said to Elena, I'm so sorry you're obviously extremely busy. Is everything okay, by the way? And she said, well, not really. And she explained to me that and it was evening time already, it was 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. And she explained that there was an emergency staff meeting going on. And she had to attend it, and it meant that she would be occupied until 10 o'clock that evening. But the problem was she was supposed to be using that time to prepare texts and to prepare tasks for a group of children that were going to be working with prototype versions of the EGE the following morning. So she was saying, now I have to be in the meeting until 10 in the evening, and then I have to work on these texts and tasks. And I said, well, I could write some text for you maybe to make it a little bit easier. I was just offering to be helpful. I didn't actually think that she would agree, but she said, oh, would you? Then she left me with a biro and a piece of paper and some practice tests from previous years, and off she went to this staff meeting. Well, as a result, I worked all the time she was away, and I looked at the models and I created some tasks and some texts. And when she came back, I said, oh, look, I've done 2 or 3 variants for grammar and lexis. I did this for reading. I hope some of it is useful. And I wished her good night and goodbye. She called me 2 days later. And she said, oh, it was a great success. And the children really enjoyed the texts, and it went very well. And I said, oh, I'm really pleased, Elena. That's good news. It was very easy for me, of course, because I'm a native speaker. And she said, let's work together. That was a surprise. And that was the beginning. That was Elena Solovova. It all happened so spontaneously and out of people interaction. And as a result, we prepared, I think, about 12 or 15 books together of practice tests. And very early on, she taught me about the Russian national exam and what it involved. She explained to me that you have to prepare children for the reality of what they will encounter. You must prepare them. You must make your texts and your tasks even harder in some cases, or certainly as hard as what they will experience on the fateful day when they sit down to take their exam. And so she was always chasing me, saying, you've got to make it harder, you've got to make it more difficult for them to differentiate. She explained to me the different competences that are involved in that exam. So it's not just English language, grammar, and so on. It's also about cultural awareness. It's also about deductive reasoning and so forth. And she encouraged me to use my own experiences because, in fact, I was a regular visitor to Russia for about 20 years. And I traveled all over Russia, all the big cities of Russia. And she said, John, use these experiences. So, for example, if we did some reading piece, let's say, on borders, international borders, I was able to use one text about crossing the English Channel from England into France on the tunnel, or the channel as we call it. But I was also able to recount in this reading piece walking along the river embankment in Khabarovsk and looking across the river to China on the other side, because I had experienced that. And she wanted me to always use those kind of authentic experiences of a native speaker encountering Russian culture, Russian language, Russian people, and to put it into those tasks. So when we did a piece on lakes, I talked about Ullswater in the English Lake District, where Wordsworth wrote his poems. But I also talked about walking across Lake Baikal at winter, which I have the real joy and privilege of doing a number of years ago. And meetings with real people, real dialogue. So I talked about White Nights in St. Petersburg. I talked about meeting friends to celebrate Pushkin's birthday. I talked about Moscow's birthday, the city of Moscow's birthday and events. I talked about meeting my godson, Stepan, and what we did. And I kept pouring out this material, and she kept turning it into relevant, accurate tasks to meet the needs of the students who had to take that exam. And you know, she did so much experimentation with how students use the time. In what do they actually do in the first 10 minutes of an exam? What do they do in the first 30 minutes of an exam? And she kept preparing materials, and she wouldn't brief the children in advance. She would let the test run and then tell them, surprise them all by asking them to stop, and then she would study what they had actually done. And so she developed strategies, exam strategies, to help them get through. Now, our typical routine when I was in Moscow was for her to get me to meet her at a tube, at the metro station, because she knew that I would get lost if she gave me an address. So we would always meet somewhere on the metro, then we would go for breakfast, and then we would fight over who paid, because she was very generous and I wanted to pay and she wanted to pay. And then we would work in the cafe for a bit, then we would go to a nearby office where she was working at that time, formerly at the university. In recent years, we'd meet at the Moscow Higher School of Economics. Then we'd go for lunch, working all the time. And then afterwards, very often, on 2 or 3 occasions, she asked me, she said, John, what are you doing for the rest of the day? And I would say, nothing. No, I'm just going back to my apartment in Oktябrskaya Polya, out for dinner later. Then I have 2 meetings tomorrow, then I'm going home. Yes, John, but what are you doing now? Oh, I think I'll just go walking, Elena, just through Moscow, just anywhere. And on 2 or 3 occasions, she said, can I come with you? Can you imagine how honored I felt? Because I knew how busy she was. She had so many tasks, so many projects, and she was wanting to go for a walk with me. But that's what we would do. And we'd just walk and we would talk. We would talk politics, we would talk culture, we would talk music, we would talk about our respective families. On one occasion, I met the family at their lovely dacha out of Moscow. I remember a very, very hot weekend, and I enjoyed that so much. And I enjoyed her so much. She was a hard-working lady. She was completely dedicated, and I consider it a privilege, personal privilege, to have spent that time. So to those of you in the conference today I wish you success. To Elena, if she was still with us, I'd be wishing her happy birthday. As it is, I miss her and I will remember her. But I wish all of you an excellent conference. And from Brighton, England, on a very sunny day with blue skies, I wish all of you good luck. God bless you all, and goodbye. Thank you for listening to me. Goodbye.